everyone. Welcome in. Welcome in. I'm very excited. I was just telling Claire I was very excited for today, even just personally excited
Oh,
to catch up and hear about everything that she has going on in Guatemala because it's so wholesome. It renews your faith in humanity. It gives you hope for the state of the world, the work that she has been doing there. And I'm excited for you to hear from her today. So, that being said, Claire, can you kick us off? I think there might be a good amount of new people, maybe not here live, but definitely watching the replay. So, can you
okay.
introduce yourself
Sure.
and what it is you're accomplishing in Guatemala?
Sure. Hi. Well, thanks for having me, Elizabeth. It's fun to see you too. I don't even know when the last time we were in the same room at the same time was. It was probably 5 or 6 years ago, I would
I
guess.
think so.
Anyway, so my name is Clare Kunkel, and I am the founder and the executive director of Gracia. Gracia is a hybrid organization, which means we are an NGO, which is the Gracia side that oversees its own social enterprise, which is our jewelry line Milagros. And Milagros is the jewelry that we've been fortunate to have you guys selling that has the fingerprint on it. So first things first, everybody wants to know how the fingerprint started. Well, the way it started was actually a mistake. What happened was we were hosting when we were down in Guatemala, we work at a home just outside of the city of Jalapa, and a lot of mission groups stay there while they're, building a school or whatever it is they might be doing. And so we set up a sale table. And I was putting out the jewelry one night, and my partner at the time, I was putting it out and I was looking at it, and I thought, oh gosh, there's a fingerprint here. Oh, there's a fingerprint there. Oh, this is not very professional. So my partner at the time, Kim, who is still one of my best friends, but has gone on to do other things, is a much better marketer than I am. And so one of the gentlemen from the medical group came up and said, to buy something. And Kim said, oh, look at this. There's a fingerprint on the jewelry. And then everybody wanted the fingerprint jewelry. Well, you don't need to tell me twice. I was going down the wrong road. Kim was the smart one. I was the one who was out to lunch on everything, worrying about professionalism. So anyways, that's just a little anecdote. But we work with about 40 girls at the Casa Hogar, which is a home just outside of Jalapa, Guatemala. Jalapa is in the state of Jalapa, which is like a state or the department of Jalapa, which is like a state in our country. So we're in the New York, Jalapa. But where we are is the Dry Corridor, and the Dry Corridor is a section of Central and only Central America. Starts in Panama, comes up the west side of Panama through El Salvador, Honduras, and through the middle of Guatemala. And it's called the Dry Corridor. It's the agricultural belt of Central America. And it's called Dry Corridor because they really have not had rain in about 12 years. Because of that, it's an agrarian economy. Everything is based on corn yields and bean yields and things like that. And when they don't come through because of the drought, it results in profound unemployment. Right now, unemployment in Guatemala, in the Dry Corridor, and specifically in Jalapa, where we are, runs at about 70%. So our challenge there was to create jobs that were not dependent on the weather, bluntly, that we're not dependent on the weather, and we knew it would have to be an export business because the economy of Guatemala will not support the kind of product that we sell. So after many twists and turns, we have become very much an export business. We are nervous, as is everybody right now, with these tariffs being imposed. We don't know which end is going to be up with this. We are a Fair Trade Federation certified company, and we get our beads from China. But we used to get in under the de minimis exemption, which is less than $850 worth of product coming into the country. You are relieved of your tax burden, or your import tax burden. That has changed. It has also changed. We used to be under CAFTA, which went into place under the Clinton administration with the Central American Free Trade Association agreement, and we are not paying an import tax on products that came into the States that way. That has now changed. So we will need to see how this turns out. I have a logistics person working on the China to Guatemala piece of it. There isn't any getting around the coming into the States piece of it, though. So right there, you're looking at a 10% increases in price across the board. So that's a little bit of a concern. But going back to what we do at the Casa Hogar, besides make this jewelry, we have about 40 girls in our program, starting at the age of 10 years old. Now, clearly, they are too young to be in the workroom. Anybody knows that. And anybody knows if you're a fair trade corporation, you're not going to have 10-year-olds in your workroom. However, World Bank research, Population Council research all point to girls who acquire essential skills, those being things like communication, problem solving, leadership skills. Those skills will serve them better in a future work life. So, in their future workplaces. So what we have done, we were gifted a beautiful soccer field. It came in just before COVID, which was really a lucky break for the home, because when COVID hit, they shut down everything, and the nuns who run the home, they were left with, what are we going to do with these 30 or 40 girls who had no homes to return to? And we had the soccer field for them. But anyways, so starting with the girls between the ages of 10 and 15 years old, we use football or soccer as a way to give these girls essential skills, transferable skills, life skills. They're all the same things. Once upon a time, they were called the soft skills, but those are the skills we're talking about. And like I said, those research has shown to us that that it does benefit them in the future, in their future workplaces. And the second piece of that puzzle is the girls who live at the home, almost all of them come from homes of abuse, violence and abuse. And sports, specifically women's in sports, can really do a lot to remediate body image. So even if we didn't have this piece of benefiting in the future workplace, we would still be running the soccer program, because so many of the girls, their bodies have been abused. And by making their bodies stronger and kind of reframing their way of their self-body images, it gives them more confidence. And so we would run this program anyway. So we consider those to be two important components of our, what we call our football program, but it is technically called Adelante, which means go forward. And the girls that we work with, the 10 to 15-year-olds, those are the Chicas Valientes, the brave little girls. After they're done in the Chicas program, they then move up to become aprendizas. And right now we have 6 aprendizas in our workroom. They are girls who come in at 8 a.m. every morning, when our Mujeres Fuertes, who are our oldest girls, and I'll get to them in a minute, but they come in every morning, and they're being mentored essentially by our oldest girls, whom we call our Mujeres Fuertes. So anyway, the girls, their mentors, have set up a table in the workroom for them to do their homework. They are there to be available to them if they have questions, if they have needs with their academic studies. And they want to make, and our oldest girls want to make sure that they get their homework done and that they go to school well prepared, and that they are 100% on when they show up in school, because otherwise we are having a problem with our apprentices, our apprentices leaving because, oh, well, we've got schoolwork and and the older girls are kind of like, yeah, you need some time management. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to put you right over there and you're going to do your homework. So that has been pretty effective as far as keeping them on track. So when they become aprendices, they go through like a bifurcated curriculum. One is to just learn the technical skills of jewelry making. And the other component of it is to help them with their self-confidence, for them to just kind of check in with their mentors. Self-confidence, problem solving, how are things going, just to kind of be a big sister for these girls. We have to remember that all these young women come from homes where at best they were extremely poor. And so they've been sent to live at the Casa Hogar to, have meals and to have all their daily needs met. I know one of the questions, or one of the preparatory things to consider that Jordan had sent me, is what's the role of a woman in Guatemala often? And one of the components would be that they're always the last to go to school. So if the family is extremely poor in Guatemala, the first ones out the door to go work in the fields, especially in a rural area where we are, the first ones out the door would be the girls. And so the families who really do love and care about their daughters and they just cannot afford to school them and have them at home with them, they often end up at the Casa Hogar. That's not to minimize the trauma. They've grown up with food insecurity and they've grown up in extremely poor conditions, but it is a different starting point than with the girls who come from abusive homes. But circling back to the mentoring program, it's called tutoria, which is tutoring, which is meant to be a little bit of an academic and a big sister kind of mix to it. But what we hope is that it gives these young women a home base when they're there. They come from formerly very chaotic lives. And to have a mentor to whom they can bring their concerns, whether they're academic, whether they're family, whether they're workroom concerns. It's no different in Guatemala. You put 15 women in a workroom together and good luck to you. I mean, things are going to happen. There's always the chisma, the gossip. There's always that stuff going on. So anyway, we feel it's very important that these young women who are now starting to work in the workroom are cared for and overseen and have somebody to talk to when they come in there and are kind of shepherded through. So they have this two-pronged program, and one, like I said, is just to specifically learn the skills of making jewelry, and the other is to also become mentored and be, help her to gain her confidence, gain leadership skills, time management. That's a big thing, obviously, for them. So that's what happens with the apprentices. And then the oldest group of girls we have are the ones who actually make your jewelry. The apprentices help some, but it's really the mujeres fuertes who are our oldest girls. So we call them mujeres fuertes. They are between the ages of 18 to 32, 33, something like that. We have 8 of them right now working in the workroom, and they have gone through a business skills training curriculum that we call our GET program, and it's our Gracia Entrepreneur Training Program. All 3 of these programs fall under the umbrella of Gracia Entrepreneur Training Program, or GET, and this is our Emprendedoras program. This is our apprentices program. So we have 2 new mujeres fuertes who came up through the ranks, and we used to start in with the business classes right away, and now we're waiting a year. It's a 3-year program, and the first year is just getting used to going to school, or getting used to going to work every day, getting used to different lifestyle responsibilities, things like that. The young women we work with are mujeres. They work every Monday through Thursday for 10-hour days. They don't work Friday, Saturday, Sunday. We have a 10-hour day for them because it gives them more time. A few of them have children. It gives them a little bit more flexibility with their kids. And it also is, in a former life, I was a nurse. And once you're there, man, you might as well just stay 2 more hours and have another day off. It's just a whole lot nicer when that day rolls around. So anyway, but that's why we structured it that way. So they start the first year just getting used to it and getting used to the work week, getting used to putting on a uniform. Well, they always put on uniforms. That's how they go to school. But getting used to being there, making sure the uniform is clean, showing up on time, remembering to bring their lunch, things like that. And then we start with our actual business skills training in the second year. And that goes for 2 years. And it covers everything from how to ship a box to how to do the budget to how to how we create our pricing model to, I don't know what else. I'd have to look at the marketing, things like that, sales techniques, things like that. So that's what they learn basically in the Emprendedoras component of the GET program. With that, let me think, what else can I tell you about that? They are full-time employees in the workroom. We do not pay per piece, we pay a salary, which means that if our sales are slow, it's not on them. We can't expect them to generate sales living in rural Guatemala. It's on us. So they are salaried employees. They receive more than a living wage. Y'all probably know this, but we don't go by what the minimum wage is. There are about 7 different minimum wages in Guatemala. We go by a living wage, which reflects what it costs to live there. And they are all making, even the earliest hires are making a very substantial minimum living wage. In addition to that, they receive 2 weeks of paid time off. The 1 week is taken between Christmas and New Year's, and that's just given to them automatically. Then they also get a week of vacation at their discretion. They get all the Guatemalan holidays off, and they get the 4th of July off because I don't want them calling me. So it's as simple as that. Anyway, so they get that. And then they also, we do not give health insurance. And the reason why is that health insurance isn't of any value in Guatemala. We bought them health insurance at first, at least it isn't in Jalapa. And we were like, okay, everybody, you're all getting health insurance. Oh, all this, so American in our way. Well, the closest doctor was in Guatemala City, which is like no shorter than like a 5.5 hour chicken bus ride down there. So that's not going to do anybody any good if she's got something major going on. And if you're talking about prenatal visits or postnatal visits or anything like that, that's not helpful. So we do a health savings account for them. It covers a medical visit a year, just a general internist visit per year. It covers a visit to a female gynecologist in town. I'd like to take this bit here to explain to you about our policy on reproductive health. We fully encourage our young women. We have a section where we talk about birth control and explain to them all your options or whatever. And then we give them money to go make a visit, pay for a visit to their gynecologist, a female gynecologist in town, where they can have a confidential conversation with her and make their own decision. We don't take a stand on it one way or the other. It's not ours to take a stand on. We feel they need to know their options, and that final decision rests with the woman and her physician. Then we also pay for a dental visit. And a dental it's a visit with an exam and a cleaning. And then if they had something extra that was really going on, we would help them with that probably. We cover their when the young women have had a few of our young women have had babies, and we've covered their prenatal care, their doctor visits or hospital stay. And then they get 3 months off, paid 3 months off, just like they would in the States. Oh, and an ophthalmology visit. And I think that does it. So that's what we do for them as far as health insurance goes. And the reason is because it's not, using insurance isn't accessible in Jalapa. And then finally, the one other thing that we do by Guatemalan law, we do put money aside for every year that they work. We put aside a month of pay for them, so that when they quit, like Ilma, who's been with us now for 10 years, is going to get 10 months of pay when she quits. They cannot access it until they quit, and they cannot quit and turn around and come back like as a means of getting the cash. This does not work. You need to quit and go, and God bless you, and you're out the door. But no, you don't get to just like access it and come back. So those are basically the benefits that they get working with us. As far as the jewelry itself goes, it's all sterling silver, and it's all done by hand. We now have funding to bring, are there any Chicagoans on the call? No? Okay. Well, anyways, there's a artist cooperative here in Chicago called Lil Street Galleries. And I was taking classes there on metalsmithing to try and teach these young women. And anyways, one time I brought in this load of soldering to be done. And my teacher there said, oh, what are you doing all this stuff for? And I said, oh, I work with these girls. Blah, blah, blah. And she goes, I said, if you ever want to come, And she said, I would love to. So that was really a really turning point for us. Stephanie is our metalsmith, and she comes down once a year. We have funding for her to come down. She went to Savannah College of Art and Design and got her degree in metalsmithing there, and then went to University of Iowa and got her master's. So and whenever she comes down there, I'm like, you guys need to understand who is here to teach you. I mean, they were used to me, and now they've got her, and she's so good and can solve any problem and tell them how to fix anything. So Stephanie Broman is our metalsmith on staff, and she'll come down at least once a year and work with them on just all kinds of stuff. The most recent thing that they learned last spring when she was with us is bezel setting stones. So they're really learning how to do the higher end kind of thing, and a lot of reuse of materials, a lot of correction, our scrap metal pile, even though we recycled it, has gone down quite a bit. So she is working with us now on not on design so much, but just on technique. And I think that's it. Our model has been, rather than hiring from the outside, to hire from within. And so for our soccer program, our Adelante program, we have hired 2 girls who have come up through the program to now run that. We do the program design here in the States, by that I mean we set forth the goals and objectives and what we feel they need to go through. Like how are we going to measure their self-confidence? How are we going to measure their leadership skills? Things like that. But then we work very closely with Emily and Evelyn on how to structure the program to do it. And they check in with us once every couple weeks. I was going to say once a week, but that's way too much. Once every couple weeks, they check in with us and we go over the metrics for their success. And then let's see, coming up in the mentoring program, I believe we have a board meeting coming up next week, but if it goes through, I believe we'll be hiring one of our other young women to run the tutoria program. So all of that is with an eye of turning over the operation to them in the future, getting the Americans out of it and getting more of the Guatemalans into it.
That's awesome, Claire. That is incredible. Usually you have to pull these things out of people and you just had it, boom, ready to go.
Yep.
That was so amazing. Thank you
Oh,
for
gosh,
sharing
thank you.
all
Sure.
of that. I have a few clarifying questions that I
Sure.
think women here and watching the replay might enjoy.
Sure.
One, the soccer program, is that
Yeah.
just for girls at Casa Azul or for other girls in the community as well?
No, it's just for the young women there.
Okay,
It's just
cool.
for the young women there. Ideally, we would like to get to a point where we can rent out the soccer field because that could be another income stream for them.
Yeah.
But because they all come from, some of them are wards of what we would call a ward of the state.
Mhm.
There is very much a concern about security.
Okay.
And then there's, so we're working on it, trying to get it figured out. We do have a fence surrounding it, of course, but it's not so much getting into the soccer field, but the way it's structured, access then to the home. And
Yeah.
that's what's a concern.
Yeah. Well, I think every woman here and anyone watching the replay, like I think all of us, I know Gretchen and I definitely believe this, we would rather go really deep and transformational with a smaller controlled group of people than spread our impact thin
Right.
across
Yeah.
more people. So I think that sounds amazing from, our outside perspective.
Thank you.
Are all of the girls who reach that, I'm assuming the translation is like apprentice age.
Yes. Oh, yes.
Do
Yes,
all
it
of
is
the girls
apprentice.
go through that? Do you allow girls to opt out, or is it just a process that you feel is best and you move them through?
Well, so that's a really good question, Elizabeth, because we went through a phase where, like, the first class that we have, many of whom are still with us, were really, they just stuck with us for whatever reasons. We were lucky.
Yeah.
And then we had many episodes of dropouts.
Mhm.
And it's hard. I mean, you have to understand that, like, these young women are in the workroom working when some other group comes through and brings the bounce house and the pizza party, and
Mhm.
everybody else is out there playing, and our young women are in there making jewelry. And obviously it's a voluntary program, but still, it's they're still young women. They still want to be out with their friends, right? So
Yeah.
that's when we really started focusing in on this Chicas, the Adelante program, and the apprentices having mentors,
Yeah.
because we felt that the original group, and like I just said, many of whom are still there, grew up together, shared apartments together, shared a bathroom together, shared dorm rooms together at the home. They are this tightly knit little group, right?
Mhm.
And so then you have this other group of young women coming up, our apprentices. It's hard to penetrate that. It's hard to feel a part of that
Yeah.
And the oldest girls, the mujeres, they don't even know that
No.
they're giving each other the look, and one understands this, and then this one knows to do that. I mean, like, anyway, so we had to like pump the brakes and say, okay, you guys, these apprentices are dropping like flies. Something's got to change here. So we had, that was part of the inspiration for hiring Emily, um, largely because you know, they need somebody who they can relate to. And
Yeah.
there's a much different impact when Emily goes out and recruits girls to come play soccer with her or come into the Adelante program than it would be me going out there and
Sure.
saying, "Oh, come join us." Well, you're a 65-year-old woman who lives in Chicago. Are you like, no, they don't want to be like me. They want to be like Emily,
Yeah.
So anyway, that's really helped. And so now our new group of apprentices came up through the Adelante program, and then they moved as a group now into the workroom. And
Okay.
now we have structured, I was just working on the production schedule with them for last week, and making sure we're observant. They have to carve out 2 hours twice a month to spend with the mujer and her apprentice. They have to spend 2 hours together, whether it's just walking around or getting a cup of coffee, or I don't care what you're doing. You can go off site if that's okay with the home. I don't care. Go, but like the point is for them to feel comfortable together. And I think we're having some success with that. And I think by moving the homework table in there, I think they're feeling more a part of things. We've also started, when we're down there, and we'll be down there again in a couple of weeks, with a community art project. And part of that is therapeutic, obviously, but part of it is also just to get the girls all working on the same thing at the same time, and just in passing the glue bottles or passing the sparkles or whatever it is they're doing, they're all interacting and getting to know each other a little bit better in a very organic kind of way. So as far as back to your original question, Elizabeth, how we get to them, Emily recruits them, and then we hope that by having a better, cascading model, that
Yeah.
they will stay with us longer. And
Yeah.
because we invest in them, they invest in us, and we want it to work.
Yeah. Yeah. That makes sense. That sounds amazing. Someone was asking if they live on site. I'm assuming the 18 and up
Yes.
women, and is there childcare help for those with children?
No, no, there's not childcare help. And I'll tell you why, because it's really uncommon in Guatemala. It's mostly with the families. We have tried to do that. Well, actually, no, that's not exactly true. Ilma brings, her little girl is 4 and her little boy is, maybe her little girl's 5 and her little guy is 3. And
Mhm.
then Maria's little boy is 8. So he goes to school in town. Um, but there isn't childcare in Guatemala is pretty, like, to drop them off at a daycare center or something is I've never heard of that, at least
Yeah.
not in Jalapa, and it's pretty provincial in Jalapa.
Yeah.
Um, there's a lot of grandmas and aunties and things like that taking care of the babies when they're little, but there's not, they're obviously not leaving their kids home alone.
Yeah.
But it's more common that like the auntie or the sister-in-law or somebody would take care of the little ones while they're working.
I feel like there's such more of a culture of extended family in that
Yes.
region of the world than
Well,
in America.
and back to your point where are they all still living at the home? It's really uncommon that we have 5. Well, our newest hires, Sandra and Evelyn, are still living at the home. That's their choice because they want to save money.
Okay.
So they cut a deal with Madre Claudia is gone now. It's Madre Balbina.
Oh,
And they cut a deal with Madre Balbina to stay living there for another year, which I think is a great idea, simply because they don't have to worry about getting they get their meals there. They have, place to live. They don't have to worry about like if the water goes off in their apartment, like they can just they have like kind of a gap year.
yeah.
But the other mujeres, they all live in their own apartments, and that alone is pretty uncommon for young
Yeah.
women in Central America. Certainly in rural Guatemala, they would typically be living with their families until they got married. But
Yeah.
they're all living in their own apartments, cooking their own meals, doing their own things.
That's awesome.
So,
That's so incredible.
so that
Hearing
was good.
Ilma's name just like fills something inside of me, makes me like my heart flip a little bit, makes me so happy. We
Yeah.
have some brand new partners on this call, and we also have some partners who've been with us since we
Since
started
inception.
partnering together so long ago. So can you just speak to, I think you said 8 adult women in currently working there. Can you maybe give us an update on some women we may know and just and maybe there's even a like a story of success that depicts how this social enterprise is accomplishing what you're wanting it to so that we can run with it and sell those resilience bracelets.
Mhm. Sure. Well, I would say, let's see, I would start with Yasmin. Um, she is, oh, I don't know how old she is, maybe 27. Um, but she has been with us since she graduated from the home, and she's been taking, what do you call it? Well, she's done now. Cosmetology, that's the word, cosmetology classes. She took cosmetology classes on the weekend for 2 years straight. So she worked, and then we were working Monday through Friday, and then she'd go work, go to her classes for cosmetology Saturday, Sunday. And she really dreams of opening her own salon. Hopefully that will come to her. It's not an easy endeavor for her. It's hard to get funding. It's hard to get all those things as a woman in Guatemala. And she can't do it without a loan. I mean, like bootstrapping it, I don't think would really be an option. She doesn't have those kinds of resources. So, um, anyway, it was interesting. Um, well, I can give you a good story about Yasmin. 2 years ago, I was getting ready to go. We were down there for our spring trip, and I was getting ready to leave, and Yasmin came up to me and she said, Clarita, I got to tell you something. I'm going to quit my job. And I said, okay, what are you going to do? And she said, well, I'm going to go to the States. And I said, not a good idea, Yasmin. And I had already been tipped off by her BFF, Emily, that this was in the offing. So I got to admit, I was a little bit prepared for this. But anyway, I say, this is not a great idea, Yasmin. You got to think about this. You understand how people are transported up to the United States? They're going to throw you in some van where you might be raped. You might be thrown out at whatever. You're going to give this guy your money. So my dad is sending the money from the States. I said, and that guy's going to dump you off the minute you're 2 inches across the border. He's going to dump you off and you're going to be on your own. And you don't speak English. So how are you going to get up to Kentucky? And she said, well, I don't know. I'm going to think about this. I said, you need to think about what's best for you. You need to think about what's going on in your world and where you have the most potential. And I said, and you, of all people in this program, have this other job you can go to, Yasmin. You have this other side hustle of like, she's giving me a keratin treatment. She's really good at what she does. I said, you have this opportunity to really be an example in your community of somebody who has made something of her life on her own. You took these classes. Nobody did that for you. You need to decide what you want to do. And so, we have 4 accomplishing objectives. We consider a woman to be economically empowered when she earns income, becomes financially literate, lives independently, and stands up for herself. Those are our 4 things. Everything we do has to tie to one of those things. Anyway, so, the first 2, the earning income and becoming financially literate, are pretty easy to monitor. Do they have a bank account? Are they saving their money? Simple enough. Yeah. But when it comes to standing up for yourself, those kinds of things are a lot more beyond, they're harder to assess because we're not there every single day of their lives. So anyway, so I told Yasmin, I said, look, you decide what you want to do, but you give this some thought and think about what you want to, you think about what's best for you. Well, so she calls me up 2 weeks later, 3 weeks later, whatever it was. And she said, well, I've thought about it and I've decided that I'm going to stay in Jalapa. And I said, well, that's good. And I said, what made you think of that? Or why did you decide to do that? She said, well, and this is an example of the patriarchy in Guatemala. She said, my dad, he really thinks he knows what's best for me. And now he's in the United States and he thinks he knows what's best for me. She said, but I know what's best for me. And it's to stay here. And it's to stay here where I have a decent job. And it's to stay here where I have a future. And I said, yes, you do. That's it. Yep. That's it in a nutshell. So that's a pretty good example of agency and of her, checking the box or standing up for herself. That was a pretty good one. Um, Maria, uh, one thing that we see coming from her, she has her little boy Bryson, who is now 8 years old. And when she came to your event those years ago, she was pregnant with him. So anyway, she uh, uh, she has really invested, I think, seeing what's good, seeing how her life is turning out, which is very different than it would have been if she had gone back to her village. Um, she moved into town, and so she has money now to pay to send Bryson to a private school. She cut a deal with the nuns, negotiating a big empowerment behavior. She cut a deal with the nuns. So that's a box checked for her. And she somehow got the how you can, like, I don't know how many of you know nuns well, but they watch the purse strings are pretty tight with these women. So how she ever got them to come down on the tuition, that alone is a, what do you call it, a confirmed miracle. Anyway, um, but she did get them to come down, and Bryson is now going to the best school in town, and she is committed to seeing him do well. Um, she could be living with her friends, she could be living other places, but it's easier for her to get him to school on time and with a good breakfast in his tummy and everything like that if she made the move. She and I had another interesting conversation when I was down there in March. I said, Marie, I want you to run the workroom next year. And she said, I need to tell you something. I'm like, okay, here we go. And she said, well, I think I'm going to quit my job next year. And I said, oh, are you now? And she said, yeah, I said, what are you going to do? And she said, I'm going to go back to my colony, or back to my, my little neighborhood, which is it's small. There's not opportunity there. And I said, and what are you going to do there, Maria? And she said, well, I'm going to get a job. I said, and where are you going to get this job? And she said, well, I'm going to look around and this and that. I said, back to the Yasmin thing. You need to think about what's right for you. Her husband is made a run for the border, and he's living in Boston now, and he's a cook in a restaurant. But we all see what's going on now in this country with people being shoved out, deported, and whatever else. And I don't think he's undocumented. I think he's strictly illegal. So he has no protections. And who knows what's going to happen with him? I certainly don't. But I do know that, like, if she has her own income and she's making it now and her salary's only going up, she's got to think about this before she cashes it in and says, yeah, I think I'm going to go home and just live back with my family again and all these other things. I mean, God bless her if that's what she wants to do. I've had the talk with her. She can do what she wants. I'm not going to, jump on her about it, but I would certainly be remiss if I didn't point these things out to her.
Sure.
So we shall see. One thing that is interesting, and going back to their reproductive health, both Maria with Bryson and Ilma with her 2 kids have not gone on to have any more children. The average delaying childbirth is very much a women's empowerment behavior. And it is that because it gives you that many more years to earn income. You also climb up the ladder. So if you're coming in at an entry level and you wait on having your kids for 3 years, 5 years, 7 years, whatever, you advance that much more so that when you stop working, you're stopping working for however long it is at a much higher rate of return. So, and all of our other young women, and they have boyfriends. They're young women. I'm sure they're having sex. I hope they're having sex, but like nobody's getting pregnant, and they're having good conversations with their doctors and taking care of themselves and looking with an eye toward their future rather than feeling like they have to do whatever the man tells them to do. They are speaking up for themselves in very healthy ways.
Yeah.
So that's kind of an interesting little side story there.
But another way to measure like growth and
Yeah,
transformations.
yeah,
That is interesting.
these are adult women. Erica is taking classes to be a makeup artist on the side.
Okay.
Erica is a lovely young woman who is very natural in her appearance, but one day sent me this picture of a day, I guess she was the model, and she was all done up, and I barely recognized her. But she would like to become a makeup artist, um, because there's a huge quinceañera business, a 15th birthday business that goes
Sure.
on in Jalapa. And it goes on at the hotel where we stay. And we have a nice relationship with them at the hotel. And so she's hoping to maybe get something going over there. Emily, in between leading the soccer program and working in the workroom, has been taking classes to become an international chef.
Wow.
And so I'm pretty certain we're going to lose Emily at the end of this year. I
Mhm.
hope we do. I mean, I hope we do in a very, I mean, I hope we don't, but globally, I hope we do because, she's got so much capability and so much talent. And
Yeah.
I think that's when we really see a reflection of what poverty is like. It can be defined in like a simple sentence. Poverty is living without resources, period. End of story. They don't have educational resources. They don't have financial resources. They don't have housing resources. They don't have social resources. When people are, say, well, what's a social asset? Because we're always talking about developing assets for these girls, whether they're human assets or financial assets or social assets. And when I started Gracia 10 years ago, I didn't have to pay a dime. I knew an attorney. I knew an attorney who would file my 501(c)(3) for me. I knew an attorney who could get, knew where to get the articles of incorporation, blah, 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 blah. I didn't have to pay a cent. These girls don't have anybody like that. If they had some pipe dream of starting something, they don't have access to those resources. I mean, and that's when you think about what poverty looks like, it's not just the lack of money. It's
Yeah.
all of these things. It's all of our networks that we just take for granted that they just don't have access to. And so when I say, I fear losing Emily, I do because she's so smart. And she's like, she's so smart and so on top of everything. If she were in Illinois, she'd be at the University of Illinois in engineering and at the top of her class, but these girls are so incredibly competent and they just don't have the exposure.
Yeah.
They all graduate from secundaria, which is kind of like a combo of high school and technical school with either degrees in teaching or as administrative assistants. Well, there aren't any teaching jobs, and there isn't any industry or administrative office kind of work in Jalapa for them to get administrative jobs. So they're really coming out prepared to do nothing. But when you work with them and you explain to them, like, this is how, these are the numbers you need for the pricing model, and this is what you need to multiply by this to do that, they can do it. They just haven't had the opportunity, and that's really the shame of it all, is that they just don't have the opportunity. So, yeah.
Everyone's loving these updates
Oh,
and and they're eating it up. They're loving
oh,
it.
well,
I know it's filling their cups as
well,
well.
good.
And
Well, we appreciate everything.
so I really appreciate it. I want to be mindful of your time, Claire. Is there anything else that you would want us really quickly? Actually, before I was going to ask you, and maybe give you a second to think about it. If there's anything else you want us to know about these girls, these women, your program, anything. But I also wanted to really quickly show, just so everyone should know what this is, but just in case they don't, the
Oh,
resilience bracelet. And this is what these 8 girls are making for us. And then on the other side of that charm is that fingerprint that Claire was talking about. Unfortunately, I haven't gotten mine yet. I had to give the one I used for marketing back. But it's perfect for spring, perfect for Easter coming up, and nothing beats that fingerprint charm. And actually, if I'm going to gift a piece of Trades of Hope, like more often than not, it's a piece from you guys, because it's so impactful when they hear like, oh my, like, there's a fingerprint. What do you mean? Where is it? Oh, I see it. Oh my gosh, that's amazing. What a connection. Like, I can run the script in my head of how they're going to respond. I'm sure you can as well, because it's so impactful receiving that fingerprint from
Thank
a
you.
precious woman who is achieving everything and more. than what you described. So I just wanted to visually connect the dots here. In case there was in case that was needed. But yeah, Claire, is there anything else you want us to know or that you want us to take with us as we are sharing the resilience bracelet and the women behind it?
No, I think I've talked about ourselves for 45 minutes.
No, you crushed it. It was amazing.
Everything.
It was amazing. We just want to make sure we do right by you in advocating for your work
Well, thank you. I guess the one thing I would say is that and as you all have heard about every little detail on, we have a whole program that accompanies the work. And I think that's significant, that it's not just teaching them how to make one thing or how to make one, you know, they know how to run this, because to just have them pumping out the jewelry, if we were, you know, ordering the supplies for them, if we were doing all of that stuff for them, they'd walk away with nothing when they quit. They wouldn't know how to, you know, run a supply chain. They wouldn't know how to prepare a budget. They wouldn't know how to do any of those things. And so that's really not empowering them. You're just hiring them to work for you. So I think that's important to know, that they really do run the business. It's not us coming in, and we do the design. And I'll tell you why, because it's sort of, you can't expect a young woman in rural Guatemala to have any clue what an American design profile is like. And, you know, we do have a few things that they have designed, you know, just independently, that we do go with, and some of them are really good sellers for us. But for the most part, we do the design.
Yeah. You don't want to put that on their shoulders. You don't want
Yeah,
them.
and it's not realistic. Like,
Right.
like this past week, I said, okay, you guys, like, take a look at these and see how you can take these, like, reiterate them into some rings that we're doing now. And it's just like, yeah, no, these are not going to work, you know. And so there's still too much of a gap between what's going to sell up here and what's going to sell down there. And what they want to make for their friends with whatever, that's, you go for it. But you know, they're not, the sales don't do well if we don't have some American influence when we're selling to an American market.
Yeah, no, that completely makes sense. Completely makes sense.
Oh.
Well, Claire, Sarah said it best. We could listen to you talk for hours about this.
Well, I think I kind of have.
So grateful for
Well,
the
thank you.
time
Well,
that
thanks
you've
for
taken
having me.
out
It
of
was
your
fun.
day to educate us and update us. It's so special, and I know we'll be carrying it with us as we market that resilience bracelet. So
Well,
thank you.
thank you. Thanks for all you do for us. We don't take it lightly, and we're very proud to be partners with you. So
Of course, it's
thanks
our
for
honor.
everything.
Well, thank you
You
everyone
all.
for
All right.
joining. Thank
All
you,
right.
Claire.
All
We'll
right.
talk to you
All
later.
right. Take care. Bye
Bye.
now.
Thank you.